when you put the work out there, maybe you're putting, I don't want to say put all your eggs in one basket, but I feel like just the fact that you're putting energy there towards something, again, I'm going to use that word alignment, that things will happen. But it's like being open to not knowing, maybe it's not where you put exactly where you put that energy, but knowing that it could come from somewhere else with maybe a slightly different result, but still sort of that same, you know, essence of what you're going after.
Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat of Take the Doughnut, here to help you get inspiration and get donuts. I'm a motivational keynote speaker, and today I'm bringing you a Take the Doughnut interview with Rena Andrews, who's the CEO and designer at Lalita, which does lingerie and accessories. Welcome, Rena.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk with you. And of course, I didn't say it in that intro, but we're both Brown grads. So I'm so happy to have this connection with you and be able to learn a little bit about your life. But before we do that, I have to ask, what's your favorite donut?
I would say cinnamon sugar.
Oh, that
Yeah.
sounds really good right now.
I love savory, so like the super sweet ones don't really appeal to me, but having that little savory touch in there.
And it's like good as a standalone and good to dunk in a drink.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant choice. I love it. So good. Well, I said just a little bit about you up front, but tell us more about yourself. What should we know about you?
Um, I think I'm going to share this in the context of sort of taking the donut, and take you a little bit on the journey of, my life and leading a few different, lives along the way. As you mentioned, I also went to Brown. I was plebe at Brown, so for everything I knew, I was, continuing on to med school.
For
Um,
those who don't know Plimi, do you want to just explain that program real quick?
Sure. PLEMI is a program in liberal medical education, which is an 8-year medical program there. So essentially, you apply in high school and you continue through for 8 years. What's different, and I think that, again, it sort of goes in line, is, Brown being a liberal school and having the open curriculum, they're encouraging you during your undergraduate years to study other things because they know the last four are going to be focused on medicine. So they want you to learn other things. So, during that time, I went to Paris. I did a teaching program in New York, which I don't think exists there anymore, but it was called Urban Education. And a car accident sort of derailed my graduating on time. So I had to take a semester off, and I was mid-year. And I just had that moment of like, I've, always wanted to go back to New York for modeling. And I was like, if I don't do this now, like it's not going to happen after med school. So I went back to New York, and I'm from New York originally, and did modeling, which segued into a 2-year acting program, which then brought me to LA for that. And as a side job, I guess not really a side job, which became actually a company. I founded a tutoring company in LA, which became my focus for about 10 years and working with, sort of the elite private schools in LA and test prep and all of that, which was sort of an unexpected turn. But, in all of this, I really identify as a creative entrepreneur. And, I'd been always have done photography, which was important to me. And, in that I was writing business plans for people, and someone had come to me and asked me to study lingerie. And that had always been this sort of like passion of mine. And I had done pole dancing, and people always said like they loved, my stuff that I wore. And I realized how powerful it was to, how empowering lingerie can be and accessories in terms of how we express ourselves and just sort of being in the moment, and that also the tactile experience of it. Um, and so anyway, she had asked me to write a business plan, and I started studying. That didn't end up going anywhere, but with that, I ended up founding Lalita I won't say unexpectedly, but I hadn't, ever seen myself as a designer or doing that, but it just all sort of organically happened. So that was around 2014. And it's been, my life, and focus, my love, my baby, since then. I think I sort of went off the rails in terms of all of that. But yeah. And with that, I also have done production and manufacturing for other people, which ironically just sort of with COVID and a lot of things, I ended up doing experiential production for the last few years as well and
Wow.
producing events.
What an incredible journey you've had. I mean, you're absolutely the right person to talk to for this because you have such a history of pursuing things that are of interest to you. And let me hit the reset button for people who've never seen a Take the Donut interview before, just so we're all aware what's going to happen here. So basically, for me, Take the Donut is another way to say carpe diem. It's all about going after the things you want in life, which you do very well. And it came from this strange thing that happened to me at Brown, where I left an actual donut on a table, and it almost instantly became an object lesson for me and what it looks like to leave opportunities behind. So I don't want to do that anymore. I want to take the donut
Yeah.
instead of leave it on the table. So really, this conversation is all about going after the things that you want in life, goals, dreams, whatever comes your way, opportunities. And what does that actually look like when we go to do it, practically speaking? So it's going to be really interesting to hear your thoughts to my questions because, as somebody who has been pretty assertive about going after things that you want, what has that looked like for you? So let me ask you this question to start with. How are you with going after goals? What is that process like for you?
Um, what I've found is sometimes it's very non-linear and things happen a lot of times in ways you don't expect, and I look now at like setting a goal, but sort of also saying or something better. Um, but I have found like when I've set intentions or I'm going to use a concrete example. I didn't know what Lalita was. I just knew I wanted to do something and I had this like vision for a box, designing it with a garter clip. I knew nothing about manufacturing, like nothing about making boxes. Like I didn't know anything about it. I just knew I saw this thing in my head. I was like, I have to make this box. And I say this to say how things like once I feel like I set a goal or like intention in that way of like when you really see it and know it. Literally, I was like, let me just stop by my friend's house today. So I was driving in her neighborhood and I was like, hey, are you home? And she's like, yeah, my friend is here. And I was like, all right, I'm coming by. And she was like, oh, yeah, here's, my friend so and so, and he makes boxes. And from there, he actually taught me all about sourcing and manufacturing and production. And I ended up getting a design patent for it. Um, so I attempt, from a daily place to write notes and set goals, and then also looking at, 3 or 6 year, where do I want to be? But for me, I found like when it's specific, just how, sort of things align for that. That
Mm.
makes sense.
I think for some people, like it feels like goals are very like written step by step things. And for you, it feels like it's a bit of a combination of that has to happen at some point, but also you involved in that example, you involved people right away.
Hmm.
And it maybe sped along the learning process for you in a way that it wouldn't have otherwise. So
Yeah.
it sounds like you pull from a lot of different areas when you're pursuing something. When you have a really big goal, and certainly a lot of the things that you've talked about were very big projects or opportunities to take on. What keeps you motivated, especially if it's going to take a while to get there?
Um, I'm gonna go back to people again. Sometimes it's seeing reactions or when I was doing a Kickstarter, which again, that was something I was like, I'll never do a Kickstarter. Like someone had mentioned it, and I was just like, yeah, that's like not my personality. Like no, like that'll never happen. And then all of a sudden, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing, and I was like, maybe I should do a Kickstarter, and I started researching it for months, and I interviewed a lot of women who were happy to participate in it, and along like during the Kickstarter itself, people emailed me and they were sharing personal stories about, just sort of even just what lingerie triggers in people, like secure, especially as women or, as we're getting older or, just sort of all the things. And I was really touched by people opening up and sharing. And I think, at the end of the day, whether it's teaching or design. I love inspiring people, and getting that. And it's not about like what you're doing is right or wrong. So it's not like an affirmation in that sense, if that makes sense. It's knowing that things, resonate and touch people. And I think that when things continuously align, that I feel like that is really the motivation to keep going. If I keep hitting blocks, and it's not like this is hard, because just because you're seeing affirmations doesn't make it any easier. But I think that those alignments kind of reinforce that you're on the right path. And I know if I'm like, okay, I think this is like brilliant, but like I keep hitting wall after wall, I'm like, maybe it's time to actually sit back and like, I don't know, I call it like the power of the pause and just reflect on like, maybe this isn't, I think it's what I'm supposed to be doing, but maybe it's actually not really the right direction. And there might be a better path that I haven't even seen yet, and then giving myself permission to realize that maybe that's not the goal I should be going after.
Hmm. I like the expression the power of pause. I've never heard somebody say that before. And I sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen. So I really like that you just put that out there. That's so good. Um, a lot of times and you were just talking about a lot of times when we're going after things, obstacles come in our way, challenges come up. And I'm curious for you if there's a specific brand of challenge that keeps coming up over and over again. Like no matter what it is you're moving towards, you're maybe going to see this Achilles heel. What is it?
I would say two lessons that I'm still continuing to face. And I think it's a life lesson for me as someone who's, independent and all of that is like you can't do anything in a vacuum. At the end of the day, yes, like this is, quote, my passion project, and that could be anything I'm talking about. But really to succeed, you have to bring in other people, other minds, other, partners and things. And I think that that's really where, things go to the next level. And that's something that I'm, continuing to work on. And it's not that I don't like work playing with others. Like I do, but I think it's sometimes it comes more naturally to other people than it does for me. Um, and then the other thing I know, like social media is still like, sort of a real thing. It's like I know it's something that, like, you know, there's another girl, the founder of Perky's, who also went to Brown, and she's completely, the face of it, and she's there every day, and we've met for coffee and stuff, and it's like, okay, I know I need to do that. But yeah, that's sort of something I'm also just working towards, and not being, afraid of putting myself out there in those ways. Uh,
Mm.
so
Well, identifying is part of the battle.
yeah.
That's all part of the process. Well, okay, when you think back on your life, and you've certainly like given us a picture of all like some of the really big opportunities you've gone after, what would you say is the biggest donut you've ever taken? Biggest thing you said yes to, biggest thing you pursued, personal or professional?
Oof. Um, Moving to LA was a big one. I never thought I would leave New York, but for various reasons, I felt like I needed to get out of New York and needed to get out of my comfort zone. I love the phrase, it's actually my like tagline on my Instagram is like life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Um, so that was a pretty a pretty big one. And I think obviously like Lalita was, but I didn't know it at the time. So had I known like all the things that were going to come up and what I was actually trying to do at the time, I don't know if like I would have actually done it. So sometimes I think it's better to just like not know, just kind of like dive in, and learn, like continuously, learn and evolve along the way.
Hmm. Well, what's a donut you're taking now? Is there anything that's in progress for you?
To be perfectly honest, I'm taking a moment now for some family stuff that and personal that I'm like that's requiring attention. So I'm, figuring that out, and then also sort of what that means in terms of the larger plan. And I know that's not the anticipated answer, but I think For me, my next step is actually simplification. And a lot of it is just like I there are challenges now with the current administration and small businesses and tariffs and, production costs and all of those things, and like really just sort of reevaluating if I'm continuing in this direction, what does it look like? And I just launched at a store in Paris this year, which I was really excited about. They were on my, what do you call it? Like, vision board years ago, and then they reached out to me last year, at the end of last year. So yeah, I'm sort of in that pause place of figuring out what is, personal, eh, business, entrepreneurial side, how is that all working together right now?
I love that you said this because I think a lot of times when I talk about the concept of taking the donut, people think I mean a certain thing. Like they'll think I'm referring to professional stuff or personal stuff. And I think sometimes the donut is like looking inwards and like asking ourselves what we're meant to learn from a situation or how we're meant to adjust. And so I love that maybe like your donut right now is actually just the word simplification. Like can you find a way to streamline so that you can, be ready to go whenever things stabilize?
Mhm.
I think that actually is a donut of its own. And it's interesting because you have to like shift gears significantly to get there and also with all the family stuff. So good luck with all of those things.
Thank you.
Um, for those who are watching this, there may be people who are watching who have a donut of their own that they want to take, and it could be something that they're still in the ideation phase, or it could be something that they've started towards and they're looking for some motivation along the way. So let's sprinkle some encouragement. And what would you say to those people?
To keep exploring it. Like what does that look like? Keep asking the questions, do the research, find things that inspire you. And also with that, taking the time, whether that's, going on a walk. Like there's a book, The Artist Way, and she talks about like taking yourself on an artist date. And I think that you also have like every week where you're doing something that, whether it's walking through a garden or going to the beach or reading a book or just sort of taking that time so that you can figure out like what does this look like for me and where does this need to go and what work do I need to do to get there? And I always feel like, when you put the work out there, maybe you're putting, I don't want to say put all your eggs in one basket, but I feel like just the fact that you're putting energy there towards something, again, I'm going to use that word alignment, that things will happen. But it's like being open to not knowing, maybe it's not where you put exactly where you put that energy, but knowing that it could come from somewhere else with maybe a slightly different result, but still sort of that same, you know, essence of what you're going after.
So beautifully said. There's a lot of room for creativity, for being open-minded in that answer, for seeing the possibilities even when you have a specific goal in mind. So for those who want to follow you on your journey, I know this isn't your comfort zone, but what links should we put in the description for where they can find more information about what you're doing?
Um, Lalita.com is my line. And then on social media, it's Lalita Who Plays. And my photography website, which has been another donut of plans of a book and some other things, is MsRenaissance.com.
So good. Everybody be sure to check out those resources. I'm sure there's a lot to explore there. And for those who enjoyed this interview, hopefully that's everybody who watched it. Be sure to like and subscribe on this video because there's so many inspirational interviews still to come. But in the meantime, Rena, thank you so much for taking a little time and sharing a bit about your journey and some of the wisdom that you've gleaned from it along the way.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. And to everybody who's watching this, go out there, get inspiration, get donuts. Bye, everyone.